Okay, first of all, as we take a look at what we're going to be doing, and these are really, excuse me, these are really our goals through the next few professional developments that we'll be together on. And our goals will be to better understand the programs of study competencies, because that is what you will be expected to teach through next level programs of study. And you have a great opportunity this year to really become familiar with your competencies so that you feel good about the curriculum you'll be teaching. And then next, we're going to create a curriculum map and use that then in lesson planning. And what I hope that does is give you that opportunity to see what your year will look like in terms of fitting those competencies in and teaching everything that you need to. And then we're going to transition to creating your syllabus, which is something you need for every one of the CTE courses. That's an Office of CTE requirement. So we'll make sure we do that. So the good news is you have time throughout this year to make that happen. So really kudos to you, Jenny, for letting your teachers have this year to actually make that transition as opposed to jumping in and floundering along the way. So as we move forward, I wanted to give a little bit of background about NLPS so that you better understand the process that brought us here. As you may or may not know, a couple of years ago, CTE oversight transitioned from the Department of Education to the Governor's Workforce Cabinet. And that is where the Office of CTE is now. It is with the Governor's Workforce Cabinet to better align it with what's happening in the workforce today, because that's really our direct feed. We directly feed into our Hoosier economy in filling those workforce needs. So as they looked at developing the next level programs of study, one of the things they did is they wanted some consistency among the courses. Among the courses, and for students, if they were to move from one district to another throughout the year, they would not be so caught off guard by a totally different curriculum being taught. So that was really their goal in doing that. That is why also our foundation teachers are so very, very important, because they need the information about next level programs of study to better inform their students as they begin to make some of those next connections for what they want to do. So you will see that every program of study in the next level programs of study starts with the principles course, then moves on to a concentrator A course and a concentrator B. That concentrator A and concentrator B terminology is actually from federal Perkins legislation. And that is why you'll see that reference to concentrator A and B. In order for a student to be considered a concentrator, they must complete all three of those courses. And you think, concentrator, what? That directly aligns with graduation pathways. So one of the ways a student can fulfill a piece of their graduation pathways is to become a CTE concentrator. So this has become extremely important. And you as a CTE teacher now bear a great influence on the potential of a student's graduation, more so than we ever have before. Then for second year, they have developed what is called a capstone course. And you will see that when you look at principles, concentrator A and concentrator B, they are all 2 credits. It is the expectation that, and actually requirement, that these courses are all taught for 2 credits each. A student is signed up for 2 credits for each of those courses. The capstone course, then, students have some flexibility to sign up from anywhere from 2 to 6. And that's really then something that you work on within your district and how scheduling works and all those great things. Again, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to unmute yourself and interrupt me. I have 0 problems with that. So currently, the way we've typically been aligned is that students typically have kind of gotten into CTE their junior and senior years. They've earned 2 or 3 credits during that time and hopefully some dual credits. And then we've had the foundational courses, and they're preparing for college and career courses that fed into those. So that's how it currently was structured. Now, it doesn't look a whole lot different in terms of when things happen. It's more terminology and how things are laid out. Those preparing for college and career and foundational courses are still there, but then that first year is now Principals, Concentrator A and B, and your second year is now Capstone. The course standards, and I'll say standards for right now, and then we're going to see that transition to some new terminology, were actually aligned to Vincennes University's or Ivy Tech Community College standards. And they literally took the standards for the course that the dual credit aligns to and plopped them right in. So if you've had a great relationship with your dual credit connection, your teacher or your department chair from Ivy Tech or VU, you're going to see some things today that are going to look very, very familiar to you, because they took those standards and they should have been some that were introduced to you through that dual credit process. Now, let's take a look at what they've aligned. Now, keeping in mind that throughout the state, a lot of CTE districts operate on a half-day configuration. Okay, so a lot of them are based on a 1, 2, or 3 hour, but most of them 3 hour, when you get into that junior and senior year. When you are a CTE program that has connected itself to a high school, you have a little bit more flexibility because you don't lose all that time in transportation that some of the districts use. So this is kind of how it was aligned. Students could easily fit that Principals, Concentrator A and Concentrator B. And they have set it up so that teachers will actually have the flexibility in identifying how they think it is best to teach those courses. To teach each one individually as a year long, or to cover Principals first, the Concentrator A course second, and finish up the year with Concentrator B. And we're going to talk more about that because those will be some decisions that you will move forward on. Now, to think a little bit about this is, where is our flexibility and no flexibility? So the non-negotiables are, in most NLPS, next level programs of study, students must take the Principals, Concentrator A, and Concentrator B in that order or concurrently at the same time. Okay, they have identified in most cases the Principals is a required prerequisite. So unlike in the past when let's say some introductory courses you could take or not take, now Principals as that first course is really a requirement. However, the flexibility comes in terms of how do you offer these classes? Do you offer them as a single standalone class? In other words, students will take Principals 1 year, Concentrator A 1 year, Concentrator B 1 year, then Capstone. Will you double up on a couple of them? And as long as they're in order, or will you offer all 3 of them? So they have given some flexibility in terms of that configuration. So if we take a look once again about what the previous slide showed us, that would have been 1 year at a career center that offers 3 hours of instruction. So keep that in your mind, that it's offering 3 hours of instruction, that you could fit all 3 of those in 1 year. Then let's take a look at how this might be configured for you at IPS.
Hey, Cindy.
Yes.
I have a really quick question on the Principals course. So knowing that it is a prerequisite to most of our CTE courses, we're most likely going to be teaching that Principals course the sophomore year.
Okay.
What if we get students that come in after that and they haven't taken a Principals course? Do we know how the state is going to allow that? Will that affect funding? Will we have to figure out like a mini Principals course?
Yeah, I think you will. You'll have to do something in terms of, because one of the great things about CTE is the state has set aside what is called CTE state funding. And if you put in a student for the Concentrator A course and the state data reporting system enters does not recognize and see that principles course, they have said you will not be funded. And for a lot of CTE districts, that funding is huge in terms of giving us the luxury of getting some of the new equipment we get, getting some of the extra staff we get, and things like that. So they really, really are sticking to the fact that it goes in the configuration of principles, Concentrator A and Concentrator B. Like you said, if you guys, so this may not look exactly like what you will offer in IPS. In some pathways, Jenny, help me with this. In some pathways, might you offer principles and the Concentrator A course like you see here on the top left?
Yes, in some instances we are doing that, mainly in our automotive, welding, construction trades, but also in our, I believe, our health sciences pathway too.
Right, right. And I would assume that where you might break principles into a sophomore year might be more like the business classes and things that have typically gone 1 year sequential classes. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So it would be absolutely no problem to offer, let's say, PCC or your financial or your foundational courses at 9th grade year. Then 10th grade, they get into the principles. Then you've got 11th grade Concentrator A and 12th grade Concentrator B. Now, teachers, you might be thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute, there's still capstone. When are they going to get that? Your capstone is a course that was put into place to kind of, I consider it to wrap things up. It's kind of the icing on the cake in terms of one of the goals, and we'll talk about this a little bit in a few slides here. One of the goals for the GWC, or Governor's Workforce Cabinet, was to try to get students as close to that first post-secondary credential as they possibly could. And so that was, capstone was kind of put into place as a way to put those things that would be the last minute things to get students there. So for some of your block classes that typically offered like, and I've got the welding up here as an example, the welding 1 and the welding 2, yours will now look like offering principles in Concentrator A during the first year or junior year. And maybe you even have some sophomores that qualify for it. But then Concentrator B, and then I want you to look at that course because that's going to become important when we start doing our competency work here in a little bit. There's a course called Technical Skills Development, and you'll see that it has a Office of Career and Tech Ed course number to it. However, you can look and look and look, and you will never find competencies or standards for that course. And the reason they did that, and this will become more obvious, teachers, as you work on your competencies today, some of you are in a position where, oh yeah, no problem, I can get through all of these competencies and that are lined out in principles in Concentrator A and Concentrator B, no problem. Others of you might look at those competencies as you work with them today and go, whoa, I'm covering this in 1 year, or I'm covering this in, oh my gosh, how will I fit it all in? The technical skills course gives you that opportunity to give students that extra time to find proficiency in those competencies, which the goal was to hopefully lead them to earning more dual credit and to earning those industry certifications. So that's what makes that configuration so important. And it was great that they had the foresight to put in that technical skills development course as a way to give some students that extra time to make sure they can become proficient. And so you as teachers feel comfortable giving them those certification exams and awarding them the dual credit. Okay. So that was a big help, and certainly something that showed good foresight on their part. Now, when we were with, we meaning CTE, the Department of Education, what we were supposed to teach was all lined up as we always called them DOE course standards, or you might have referred to them as DOE academic standards. They are now going to be competencies. They came from, like I mentioned before, the VU outcomes. So if you've had dual credit with Vincennes University, you might very well have seen these as listed as outcomes. If you are associated for dual credit with Ivy Tech, you may very well have seen these identified as objectives, because that's what they call them. They are now our course standards at the secondary level, or what will be called competencies. So they've changed just a little bit of our wording for us. I do want to give you, just to give you a picture of what this page looks like. This is the Governor's Workforce Cabinet page. And if you go to just the www, and you might want to write this down somewhere because it is just a fabulous resource, the www.in.gov/GWC. And then if you want, you can even go /CTE. That'll take you to the CTE page. And from there, they have a little tab that you'll see there on the left that are the career pathways and programs of study. And they have just great resources for you as teachers. And that is where you will find what is called the full review document, meaning it has every next level program of study in it, every principles, concentrator A, concentrator B, and we'll soon have the capstone classes because they're developing those this year. And it is just a fabulous resource, along with some other things that will be there as a resource. So I just encourage you to kind of keep that handy, just because it's just good information. On that page, you will also see something called the frequently asked questions, and that is just a great resource as well. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk just a little bit about was, you will hear in CTE, and when you get to economic development meetings, and maybe some of your employers might talk a little bit about scaffolding experiences or stackable credentials. And I just wanted to give you a little picture about what are they talking about? What do they mean? So the goal for high school is to try to get students to at least this short-term certificate, then stack on it the next level of certificate, stack on it more education to get to an associate's degree, stack on it the next level of education to get to a bachelor's degree. So when you hear that terminology in terms of stackable credentials, this is what they're talking about, taking students right on up to get to the highest level of attainment they can in terms of education and training. Now, what does that look like in terms of credit? You can see there what they're talking about. So they're talking about 15 to 21 credit hours for the short-term certificate, which is the first entry-level credential that you can get at Vincennes University or Ivy Tech Community College. And then, of course, some schools you will hear as you talk to your colleagues around the state, some schools will be tied to early college and things like that, and they're working toward the 30+ hour credential or the associate's degree. So that's kind of what it looks like as you hear some of that terminology, because they're trying to incorporate more and more of this into the high schools. What does it look like? What does it mean? Now, excuse me, a couple things that I think are important for us just to keep in mind. And they continue to add to the frequently asked questions document at the Governor's Workforce Cabinet website. Foundational courses will remain. So you saw on the earlier graphic where that year 9 and possibly 10, if you don't go into principals, you got that foundational course opportunity. There was a lot of concern at first that they were going to do away with that, but they have assured us that there's no reason to get rid of it. Those serve really great purposes. Then the principal course is offered after foundational. Now, it does not have to be a requirement. The foundational courses are not a have to. They are not a required prerequisite, okay? But your principals course is a prerequisite to concentrators A and B. There are very few, as a matter of fact, I can't even think of one to name for you where that isn't true, but of course, I guess we never say never. And then it says often required. We've been told that it is required. Again, there may be that one-off that is they meaning the governor's workforce cabinet, the office of CTE, work through things they find when. And as I said, that funding is really big for us as CTE districts because it gives us a lot of opportunity. And it should be offered in conjunction with the A and B courses. In other words, it's meant to be truly a pathway.
Cindy, I have a quick question for you and for Jenny.
Yes.
This is Chelsea, Career Academy Coordinator at Arsenal Tech. I know it took us a few minutes to get up and running. Can you guys just recap for a second for our business educators that are on the call from Tech who teach PCC, personal finance? Can you please recap, basically what you have in mind for them today and their role here, as some of the things that we're doing might not be specifically translatable to them? Can you just kind of fill them in on your expectations for them for today? Because we're excited to have them with us, and I want to make sure that they know your goals for them, as it's not quite as cut and dry for them.
Yeah, Chelsea, I can answer that. So what we did was we did add some of our foundational teachers to the actual pathway courses. So we just kind of divided them up based on if you're teaching like a nutrition and wellness, or you're teaching a PCC, into pathways that you might, work with to really help engage and interest your students in making an informed choice. So how those standards really that you're teaching in that foundational level can make those connections to that particular pathway. So everyone will be in a group that will be able to have that discussion, and how they can connect those standards of on that foundational end to the principles and some of the advanced level work throughout the pathway. I hope that helps.
Basically, our priority for them is to truly understand this model because they're great communicators with our students and to be able to speak to these. And so is it okay with you if those business educators kind of just circulate to the different pathways and just kind of become acclimated with the layout for those? Is that all right with you guys?
Yeah, that would be fine, Chelsea. That's not a problem.
Awesome.
And like I said, for the preparing for college and careers teachers, we will be having additional conversations and discussions around some of the new curriculum that we're looking to add for next year.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. And I'll tell you what, this is a fabulous opportunity, because the thing we always have to keep in mind in terms of CTE educators is we have to keep in mind that we are elective courses, that students choose to take our courses. And if we don't have students choosing to take our courses, we got some problems because we won't be able to offer them. So what that makes those PCC and foundational teachers so important, because you are the first line to that recruitment that CTE offers. So we hope that this day allows them to become better familiar with the curriculum. I ask a lot of questions in terms of, hey, how can I better let students understand this? And where can I incorporate that? And where can I use you, upper level teachers, as a resource for my classes? So it's a great opportunity for networking today. So I hope they get a lot out of it. So, okay, as we go on, you're right. Next level programs of study in some schools may not start at 9th grade. It will also depend on the actual pathway that you're in. Some may, like Jenny mentioned, some of you will offer the foundational principles A and B as a single course offering throughout 4 years. So it really, they did a good job giving us some flexibility for that. Now, capstone courses that literally cannot even be, for those people who are implementing NLPS this year, cannot even be offered this year. They're not putting them into place till next year. The whole goal, as I kind of alluded to before, was to make that capstone course an opportunity to finish up additional dual credit, to perhaps earn that first post-secondary credential, to finish up additional information to get more industry certifications, but also and they actually wanted those two things happening first and make a priority of the capstone course. But also they wanted an opportunity for students to get those work-based learning experiences. And they've let that capstone course open to allow that for students to offer that. So it certainly does allow for options for our students in offering that capstone course. Now, as we move through our today and our next 3 PD sessions, I thought it was important that we get on the same wavelength in terms of some of the language and the verbiage we'll be using. So, we talk about standards. We've always talked about standards. Now we've got competencies we're throwing in and curriculum. And I'll tell you, if you Google curriculum, you will spend all night and the next week looking at all the different definitions. So I thought it might be good if we kind of get on the same wavelength here. So first of all, what you always knew, if you are a longtime teacher, you have always heard about standards, okay? Now in the NLPS documentation, you will see that they are called competencies. So, some of us have been around a long time. You might even hear us mix up the words every once in a while. But that's when you hear competencies, that's exactly what they're talking about. They're talking about your course standards. Competencies, remember, what our standards used to do, outline what students need to know or be able to do. Okay? So it is that, what is it that, as I teach, what is it that the students should know or be able to do by the time I'm done in order to say that they are proficient at that competency? Competencies are a part of curriculum. Okay, and that's real important to remember. Curriculum also includes all the materials that you use to teach, the equipment, the resources. If you use Kahoot, if you whatever you use to deliver that information to get students to that proficiency level for their competencies, that's all wrapped up in what is called curriculum. So we are using curriculum with that definition, not just as a standalone course. Competencies, keep in mind, are not instructional practices. Instructional practices are the way you will teach so that students can master the competency. So someone may say to you, what instructional practice are you using? Well, you may be using lecture, you may be using demonstration, you may be using hands-on practical project-based learning. Those are all different instructional practices that are part of your curriculum. And then competencies themselves do not define how teachers should teach. Competencies are complemented by well-developed, aligned, and appropriate curricular materials, as well as robust and effective instructional strategies. And by that, what we mean is that competencies taught at IPS may be taught differently at another CTE center or district. As long as you get that student to the mastery of the competency, that's the goal. Okay. So now, as I've talked a lot so far, are there any questions that you might have up to this point? Because then we're going to move into our first activity. Don't hesitate to unmute and just come right on in. Well, as things come up, please don't hesitate to let us know. Okay, this first activity that we're going to do, we are going to take a look at the course descriptions of your principles, your concentrator A, and your concentrator B courses. Now, I believe you have that information with you. And that's what was in your folders, right? So the principles course, probably the description as well as the competencies are printed on green paper. Am I right, Jenny? And
Yep,
then
that's right.
Concentrator A on yellow, concentrator B on red.
Yep.
So that becomes important with our next activity, okay? But I want you to, at this time, take a look at the course description of those 3 courses. That's what we're going to look at first. As you look at it, do you think the students are going to understand it as written? Do you think it's going to entice a student to take your class? Because remember, let's go back to the fact that we're elected. We have to entice students and interest them in our courses. And that's really the basis of this activity. So I'm going to ask that you individually, okay, even if you're with a group for right now, I would like you to individually rewrite that course description, the course description of principles, the course description of concentrator A and concentrator B courses, in a way that you think will describe your class and entice students to enroll in it. Okay? And then we're going to do that for 20. I'm going to give you 20 minutes to do that. Now you'll notice we've not worked in any breaks because we've got a lot of work time. So feel free, if you need to take a quick break, to do so during those work times. Then after that, we're going to come back together and we're going to have you, if you're in the same room, we're going to have you pass it to the person closest to you that may or may not be teaching your exact class. And the reason that that's so important, maybe you're going to teach the principles in concentrator A. Pass it to the person who's teaching the concentrator B, and vice versa. The reason is they can give you those constructive suggestions for improvement. Okay, get some new eyes on it. If you happen to be in a group where you have someone that is totally not teaching within your pathway, pass it to someone out of your pathway, because then you get a really good look at what someone who is not as familiar with the content will understand. The great news is that the state provides us course descriptions for those courses. But when you put together your recruiting information for students, you do not have to use their course descriptions. So that gives us the flexibility to make it a little bit more kid-friendly language, and something that both, and something parents too will want to read, because we tend to use a lot of educationese when we're writing things for education itself. So this is what we're going to do. For the first 20 minutes, you're going to work on it individually. No help from your neighbors, okay? And rewrite those course descriptions, okay? You don't want this to be a dissertation. Remember, your students are going to be reading this. Think of how long they'll spend time reading something before they check out, okay? So, make it as concise and as full of information and enticing as you can. Then during that time, you will begin to see yourself, if you're watching the screen, disappear into different places, okay? Because we are going to move you into breakout sessions, and then we're going to pull you together to work collaboratively for 30 minutes to come up with one good course description for the principles class, one good one for concentrator A and concentrator B. And then we're going to come back into our large group room here, and I'm going to call on some of you to read some of your good examples. Okay, so make sure you point out someone who will be willing to share that with us as we do that. So first 20 minutes, totally individual, working on your course descriptions. Then during that time, you'll go to breakouts. We will let you know when that time is, or you will see a timer on your screen. Then we'll spend 30 minutes as a group collaboratively coming up with principles, concentrator A and concentrator B course descriptions. And then at the 30 minutes, we're going to bring you back together to share some great examples. Does that make sense?
Yep. And just a quick note to our foundational teachers, you can do this too with your courses. So please take this time. The whole purpose of this is, as we're getting ready to, start to think about the course description catalog for next year, these would be great to use in something like that. So I'd really like to use what you are saying here to really, hook students into your course, because we have in the past used the DOE sort of descriptors, and yeah, they're just not that grabby. So yeah, all of you I think can participate in this activity.
One.
Go for Thompson.
Oh, okay.
This time, it is my understanding that when they have a few music teachers that are on break, if they are on break, they can actually go over. If they have
Chelsea, can you mute yourself?
their new laptop in the media center.
Okay.
I apologize.
You're fine.
That's okay, no problem. So that's what we'll do. I am going to pop around to the different breakout rooms. So as I appear, I might just say something, hey, I'm here, can I help with anything? Just because I know you'll be working on your items, and I just want you to know I'm here to help in any way that you need help. So I will be doing that. I will be popping around to different breakout rooms as we do this. Okay.
So I'm gonna, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Amy. At this time, we're going to let Amy take over.
Okay, so I have as many people as I could assigned to your breakout room. If you don't get moved to a breakout room, let me know, and I'll stay here in this main room. And if you need to know which room you go to, I think Jenny will be able to help, and I think you'll be able to choose your breakout room. When I open the rooms, there's going to be a new button at the bottom of your screen that says breakout rooms. So some of you will go automatically, and everybody else, if you need to know where you need to go, you should be able to choose that when you click on the breakout room. Just be sure to ask. Okay.
And if you are in a situation where you think, boy, this placement in this breakout room doesn't fit me as well as I had hoped, again, you can choose to leave the breakout room, go back to the main room, talk to Amy, because she will always be in that main room. So that that way, if you need some guidance or need some help, she can certainly help with that. So, yeah. Great. Thanks, Amy.
So here we go. I'm opening the rooms.
I apologize for my muting snafu. I did want to let everybody know. Also keep in mind that, when we start these recruitment processes, these students are 8th graders. So just make sure when we are, when we're putting these descriptions together, please be mindful of that these conversations start when they are truly that young. So when we're thinking, vocabulary and vernacular, please be mindful of that as well, because these may be shared as far down as that 8th grade space. And again, apologies for my radio.
No problem. No problem.
Great point, Charles.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just as kind of a side note, what Chelsea was saying, does anyone know if the Junior Achievement had their program before pre-COVID where they had the big event at the fairgrounds? And I thought it was one of the greatest things I had seen in a long time, of getting kids jazzed on career paths while they were still in junior high. And I remember what a brat I was in junior high, and these kids were engaged, focused, getting interested. Is that still on? And if that's possible, is that something that IPS can not just bring students over with, but maybe even have their programs on show to show them how they can get started?
Yeah, so I'm so glad you mentioned that, Ron. That is JobSpark. And we have a very active role in JobSpark. Actually, I'm on one of the committees. So that will be taking place, but I think it's going to be taking place virtually again this year. But yes, in the past, we actually took them to the fairgrounds for that. Hopefully we'll get back to that next year.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. There's nothing beats putting gear in kids' hands to get them thinking about their future.
Yeah,
that's
and
right.
It's one of those events I've only heard good things about.
I think we should have everybody now.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, guys,
Great.
we're going to transition back to our large group. And as Cindy mentioned at the beginning, we're going to see if there's anyone that's willing to share what they created. Why I did this. So Cindy, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay. Now, you know how this works in class. If nobody volunteers, I start calling on people. Anybody willing to jump out there? Trust me, there's no wrong answers. That's the best part.
We have a volunteer.
All right.
Hello.
Hello.
So if we do that, oh shoot. Yeah, trying to get it set up. So if we add the capstone for construction,
Okay.
we talked about, hold on, sorry. We talked about going into industrial scaffolding a little bit more. Adding concrete highway construction, because a little bit more heavy duty, commercial steel framing. And then to do that, if we do the first year program, add in a little bit more math, keep them out of the shop that year so that they can reach the age group that they should be in to be able to touch power tools, a little bit higher maturity level to be able to handle that safety wise.
Okay, great. How did you formulate all that into a good course description then for kids?
Well, basically we kind of came up with a list so far. We still have to do the actual wording for course description.
Okay.
Okay. I just kind of did it on.
Okay, great. Great. So
And then, well, in the
one of
first
the
year as
things-
well too, go through OSHA 10, maybe add OSHA 30 to give them those certifications. And then
Yeah.
that way they know the safety behind everything that they'll be doing in the shop.
Okay, great. So as we turn you loose here on our next activity, one of the things I encourage you to do is take a look at how do you roll some of that into a course description
Okay.
that gives kids information about what you're doing, as well as, pull them in and
Okay.
see how they're doing.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank
Do we
you.
have any other volunteers that want to read out their course description?
We have a volunteer in the chat
Oh,
from Teresa.
Hello.
okay. Teresa, let's go. You're good. Can Teresa hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, you're very light. You're very weak.
All right, let me turn up the volume.
Okay.
Okay, is that better?
Very little. Maybe try just moving a little closer. Maybe that'll be good enough.
Have a desire to be your own boss and work
Tanya.
hard.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Thank you.
These two things together can bring in a great source of money, parentheses, income. In Principles of Business Management, we will explore business ownership, how to develop a business organization, how to conduct business management, control your facilities, and administer finances, and how to develop a great business enterprise practice.
Okay, great. So what made you
Love it.
decide to put that whole idea about money in there?
I think when I was thinking about your audience being 8th graders, I think talking about money might excite them. And then I don't know what their parents think, but I know if I read that for my kid, I would be like, oh, that's fun. Like the teacher's thinking about what might interest my child. Because I mean, even my own 9-year-old's like, I want to make money. So,
Right.
Because everybody wants to buy stuff. Everyone wants to be a consumer. So trying to drive to their personal why.
Right. Great idea. Good example. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to report out?
I'll give it a shot.
Okay, I like that.
All right. I kind of gave it the hard sell, so I don't know if I got it right or not, but using the principles of design, the initial course. Are you the kind of person who likes to create things using computers, cameras, and your imagination? Do you see yourself as a person who can create great visual stories through computer graphics, digital photography, and video? Then your first step toward building an exciting career path in digital design, I wish I could say it, begins with our Principles of Design, Digital Design course. Principles of Digital Design gives you a first hands-on look at how professional design is made. You'll explore design basics while learning to produce creative design solutions for professional use. Using Adobe Creative Cloud software, you will also learn to capture and edit images using digital camera systems for both still photography and video production. Start your career path. Start your path to a career where you get paid to be your creative self.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, good job. Good job. Great, great. Well, I'll tell you what, you've shared some really great examples, so it's really obvious that you're in tune with who your potential audience will be. So good job. Jenny, I would assume that you want them to turn these rewritten course descriptions into you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So what I would like you guys to do is to continue to work on yours if you haven't completed it for the principles, the concentrator A. If you can at least get your principles done, because really that's what we're running with for this year. We will publish we typically publish the course catalog around December, January-ish. So, there's a few months, but get those to your Career Academy coordinators, and I will work with them on getting that information once we're ready to start working on that document. But
Okay.
thanks, everyone. Great job.
Great. Yeah. Great examples. Great examples. Now, did anyone have any questions about the activity that we just completed? As I popped around to the different breakout rooms, you guys were doing really well. Lots of good conversations.
I think there is some melding of prior content areas together. So a lot of good conversation had to happen, especially for our design courses, because we're taking things that used to be very cut and dry and we're putting 2 or sometimes even 3 different teachers' realms together, sometimes in a way that can be a little problematic. So we're kind of digging through that. So I think a lot of time was needed to really look at those competencies to refresh on where those are actually even falling as we go forward. And I know that's what we're going to do here momentarily, but I think some people, as you can tell with construction, used a lot of time to really try to wrap their brain around what is falling where to be able to even design those descriptions, to make sure we're giving accurate descriptions of what is asked to fall content wise within those spaces.
Yeah, great, great. I'm so glad, and I'm thrilled to hear you say about starting to really look at the content and see how it falls, because you're right. That's particularly this next activity we do. I think it'll generate a lot of really great discussion that will lead into the afternoon as you wrap up the assignment, in terms of how does this all fall together? And now, are there some things that maybe I used to teach that somebody else will have to teach, and things like that, dependent upon the courses. So great, great discussion. Good deal. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about our next activity. Now, this is going to sound very elementary, but I really think you're going to get a lot out of it. I really think it'll be meaningful for you. So what I'd like for you to do is and let's group together principles by itself if you know it'll be taught by itself. If you know you will be teaching principles and concentrator A together, and then concentrator B in another year, let's put principles and concentrator A together. And we specifically put those competencies on different colored paper so that in your mind, you could keep that a little straight. So keeping in mind that your principles are all on green paper, your concentrator A yellow, and your concentrator B red. We want you to cut your competencies apart and not pay any attention at this point where they lie, if they are principles or concentrator A. And then of course you guys will need to keep concentrator B separated. Then what we'd like you to do is physically put them into a logical progression of when you believe that competency should be taught. So that, we all take a curriculum and we all take a look at, perhaps what the editor of the book or whoever said, you should teach, and we kind of do some rearranging because, this makes more sense here if I teach it here. And so that's the point, to put things in an order that makes sense as you teach them. Then what we'd like you to do is use the big chart paper that you were given and tape or glue the competencies to that paper in chronological order on how you think you would teach them throughout the year, leaving a 2-inch gap between each competency. And and then please make sure you number those big chart papers so that you keep them in the order you want them. This is kind of what we think it should look like, okay? So pretending that this is your chart paper, you'll have put your course name, that you're covering principles or you're covering concentrator A or both. Like I said, if you're going to teach principles and concentrator A in the same year, you can meld those competencies. It's just, what's the end result? I need to teach them before I get to the end of the year. So this was an example of some of the competencies from advanced manufacturing, where you would literally cut that competency apart, tape it or glue stick, whatever you have available, onto your sheet as what is the first thing I'm going to teach when I look at these competencies, and tape that first, leave a 2-inch gap, tape the one you think you'll teach to second, leave that gap, the one you will teach third, and of course we all know as good teachers, we spiral back and we reteach and those kinds of things, but we want to get a basic chronological order of when you believe you will be teaching things. So you may end up with, depending on how many competencies you have, you may end up with a lot of chart paper, but we want that 2-inch gap for our future workshops together because we're going to do some things with that 2-inch gap. Does that make sense in terms of what we're going to be doing?
I just wanted to say, for some of our tech educators that just received their competencies, some of them are still determining how they're going to be pairing these, if they're going to be pairing principles and concentrator A. So I don't want any of my teachers to feel like they are behind if they haven't determined yet. I think this will help them determine that, but some of them did just, today receive the newly released competencies. So I know at least, Mr. Lamont definitely will still be determining how we're going to package those and if we will. So just to those teachers, if you're not to that point, that's totally okay. And this will help get us there.
Yeah, Chelsea, you couldn't be more right on that. That's what makes these kinds of activities so important, because it literally, you end up with this physical big picture. And that's why the colors were so important, of saying, where do things fall? And it will certainly help guide your discussion with your career leader, your career cluster leaders, as well as with Jenny. So at this point, Amy, if you will, I think we can go ahead and go to breakout rooms. Again, I'll be popping in breakout rooms. If I pop in, if you have absolutely nothing, please don't hesitate to unmute and say, hey, we're good, we're working, and we'll go on. But we will come back together at 11:20 for kind of a final check-in and wrap up. Okay, great. Thanks, Amy, if you'll send us to breakouts.
Okay, here we go.
Great. Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope that that time went well. I know it sure went fast as you start to delve into those competencies. Are there any questions that we might be able to answer? Because I know as you go into the afternoon, I saw on Jenny's agenda that you will continue working on this assignment. Are there any general questions? I didn't get around all the breakout rooms that we might be able to take care of before you would do that. Okay, hearing none. Oh, wait, got it. Go ahead.
Thank you. We have a question from our cosmetology folks. They are wanting to know if there is a domain that is listed is it mandatory that they teach that domain? Because they say that it's never been taught, one of those kind of things. And so what's the verdict on that?
Yeah, for cosmetology, what you will notice is that cosmetology was not a completed.
Guys, hang on a second, please. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You have to call that class back in order. But yes, cosmetology was not one of those pathways that was completed. So there's one of two things that would happen. That yes, as they finalize things, someone will have brought that up and said, you know what, we don't need to teach this. Why is it here? Or, and I believe that they typically have VU involved with that because that's the only university I know that has any kind of connection to cosmetology. Or they will say, no, it is important and it does have to stay. So for right now, I would say don't worry about it. But when you see the final, if it's there, then yes, the expectation is that you will teach it because it aligns to dual credit. Yeah. Anything else?
Not really a question, Cindy, but really just more of a comment. First of all, just wanted to thank everybody for their time this morning. I hope you had some great discussions and got a little bit more of a understanding of next level programs of study and the competencies that will be transitioning over. I know there's still, a couple, as Cindy just mentioned, cosmetology that isn't quite finished yet. I think computer science, radio TV. So my understanding from talking to the governor's workforce cabinet is that those are supposed to be finished pretty soon, like within the next month, I would think. So as soon as we get that, we'll definitely send that on. Also just want to let you guys know that this is an activity that we're going to continue. So if you didn't finish, if you're still cutting things out, or if you haven't quite figured out, the actual order yet, that's okay. We're going to use, not just today, but, some additional time over the course of the year to get much more familiar with, with the standards and with the courses. So again, just want to thank you for your time. And then I know, you do have lunch from 11:30 to 12:30 today. So I hope you can get out and enjoy this beautiful day. But also just want to remind you too, I'm going to put in this chat, in the Zoom chat, the survey for this morning. So if you could fill that out at some point, that would be really helpful. And then there will be another survey for the afternoon.
Jenny, you just muted.
Yep, I just muted myself on. Yeah. Totally did not mean to do that. So I'm sending this link to the survey for this morning's session first, and then we'll do another one. And we will check in at 12:30 on Teams. I'll make sure you guys get that link through your Career Academy coordinators just at the beginning so we can sign in, because there is a sign-in process for that. But thanks, everyone.
Great. So you'll see that your homework is to simply complete what you've been working on. And I believe you have the afternoon to work on that. And
yep.
I really liked joining the breakout rooms. There was a lot of really great discussion going on and stuff. So I wish you the best, and we will plan on seeing you October 18th. And I'm going to hang on just a few minutes till Amy and I see that everyone's checked off, just in case there were any other questions. Okay. Take care. Enjoy your afternoon.
Thanks so much, Cindy. And Amy.
You're so welcome.
Good
Amy
stuff.
did a fabulous job.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, everyone can enjoy their lunch.
Okay, bye, everybody.